Thank you, Dr. Snider. Our first commentator will be General Newbold, who came to the attention of many of us in April of 2006 with the Time magazine article, which has been characterized as a fully throated critique of the war in Iraq. General Newbold.
Thank you, Bob. Is this microphone on? I was hoping not. No. As Bob said, I was invited here because I am on that small group called the Revolting Generals. It'll be interesting to go over some of what went into this with you because there are a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings. Because I don't really know the other generals who revolted, save one. But I do know a lot about my case and the case of one other officer. I also was, as Dean Acheson said, present at the creation. I was in the rooms and in the councils, and I know what went on, and we can talk about that. Also, I think Don Snyder's matrix, the last slide he showed, was a good benchmark. And if you like, I can go into my personal case on that. But in providing my remarks, which I hope will be very short, I used the questions that were posed by FPRI as to how I should address my remarks. And I'll run through them, as I said, briefly. What is the line on offering advice? First point I would make is I don't believe that civilian control is in dispute. I don't recall in public or private any member of the armed forces ever questioning the absolute authority of civilian leadership. The advice I received as a very junior officer remains valid to me. And that is, when you confront an issue, offer the best advice you have. That advice will either be taken or rejected. If either way, as long as you wear the uniform, your duty, even sacred duty, is to obey that direction to the very limits of your professional ability. The issue here, though, and why you're having this conference on civil-military relationships, is that a small number of retired officers, senior officers, chose to speak out on an issue of some gravity. The suggestion then is that no matter how egregious the policy, no matter how terrible the consequences, that it is inappropriate for individuals no longer wearing the uniform who have become citizens to speak out. I'm reminded of the anecdote about General Tony Zinni. When a previous administration, a Democratic administration, suggested that we should launch our own insurgent activities in the south of Iraq, he counseled against it and referred to it as a Bay of Goats. And the National Security Advisor at the time challenged him. What gave you the right to speak up? And he said, I believe it was the Constitution. So before you limit too strictly the rights of individuals who have served a long time, whether they're in the CIA, the State Department, the Department of Commerce, and otherwise, consider how you're ostracizing or fencing off an element of society that may be important. The next question is, how much can or should the military speak out? Well, I've already given some of my thoughts on it. I want to make a couple of additional points. First of all, in my view, the military in uniform should never speak out in public. I would make a caveat to that. It's already been ascribed the duty of a professional when called before Congress. And I can talk about that too. Let me describe those that chose to speak out. Let me broaden the group a little bit because it's generally limited to the revolting six. It's arguable that the most knowledgeable people about this region of the world from a military perspective were the former combatant commanders of Central Command. And if you look at the words and statements of a succession of them, from General Schwarzkopf through General Hoare, through General P, through General Zinni, what you'll find is a group that was deeply, deeply troubled what was happening. I'll make another point. I spent a lot of time with the senior officers of all of the services when I was the director of operations. And I can tell you the sense of mystery and, let's pardon the term, shock and awe over the senior officers about what was happening was pervasive. It was almost universal. From every service, the most senior officers coming to me, what in the world is going on? So the issue is not who thought that the policy was in question, but who did something about it. And your issue in this discussion on civil-military relations ought to include a discussion of those that sense something terribly flawed, and having served long in the service, know that those who pay the price have no voice. And what is their duty and what is their obligation? What are the ethical dimensions of serving both branches of the government? Oath is clear, in my view. The duty of the serving officers is to serve those appointed above over them to the best of their ability while you're in active service. And when the Congress calls and asks questions, it is equally your oath to give them honest answers. And as Representative Skelton said, that's a bigger problem than speaking out in private counsel. What are the obligations of senior officers to their seniors and to their juniors? Senior officers is as I've already stated. Frank, did you load that PowerPoint slide of mine?